The Handmaid's Tale, now in its fifth season, maintains its peculiar, unique position of being both a crucial indicator of possible dystopian Christophascist futures and a taxing watch. The fictitious scenarios posed in Margaret Atwood's cautionary novel about patriarchal totalitarianism, then adapted into this series, have only gotten closer to reality in the 5 years since it first debuted on Hulu. When she assisted in the murder of Fred Waterford in season 4 of The Handmaid's Tale, June Osborne finally achieved her long-term goal and exacted sweet revenge. The aftermath of this heinous act and June's psychological effects seem to be the main topics of the fifth season. The premiere, which Elizabeth Moss expertly directs, talks about Serena's future plans after this devastating blow as well as June's current mental state. At the beginning of episode titled Morning, June washes her bloody hands in the bathroom as she relives Fred's murder. She can't help but smile, and the series begins with the heroine's trademark rebellious spirit. When her husband Luke and closest friend Maura question her as she leaves the house, June ignores them. In a desperate attempt to figure out why she is covered in blood, they pull her back before she exits the vehicle. June informs them that she has killed Fred and then sped off in the car while wearing that maniacal smile. The morning after their valiant assassination, she meets up with her fellow murderers in an unassuming cafe. Like June, they are all still covered in Fred's blood and are all ravenous. The topic quickly shifts to their next victim. For all of her wrongdoings, they want Serena killed, or at the very least tortured. A boot full of weapons is displayed to June, which reminds me of the Breaking Bad climax. June appears hesitant to go back to Gilead, despite the fact that these women are obviously seeking more vengeance. Serena is informed of the bad news that morning and transferred to a new safer location. When she asks what's going on, she is told that Fred has died. The icy, restrained woman remembers dancing with Fred, and as she is being taken away, she sobs in the elevator. At her new cell, Mark Tuello welcomes her and explains the circumstances surrounding Fred's passing. He was a part of a trade in which 22 prisoners were exchanged for him. The murderer sends Serena his wedding ring and a severed finger. She interprets June practically announcing her involvement to Serena as a sign, and the latter immediately worries that she will be after her next. June goes to her friend's house after learning about Emily's absence. Emily's wife Sylvia welcomes her and explains that Emily has come back to Gilead on her own initiative. Emily is ready to fight and may be looking for Aunt Lydia so she can exact some sweet revenge on her. June departs and makes an effort to remove the blood that is still adhered to her body. As she scrubs her hands, there is a small nod to Lady Macbeth. She then washes her face in the sea, as you do. It is obvious that June's decision to kill Fred has left her feeling out of sorts. In the meantime, Serena confronts Tuello next to Fred's motionless body and demands to see her husband's remains. Serena expresses her concern for her own safety this time by speaking out about it. She is aware of what she did and is aware that June will target her next. Serena rejects Tuello's offer of safe asylum in Canada because she is aware of the outcome and claims that he cannot shield her. She rips off the sheet that was covering Fred's body and reveals his dismembered body. The excessive amount of time the camera spends on Fred's disfigured remains serves to highlight the extent of June's violence. Because of June's declining mental health, Maura expresses concern and says she doesn't feel safe having June in the house or entrusting her with Nicole, her own daughter. Even stranger is the fact that June actually concurs with her friend. Next, Tuello gives June an update on Serena's response to hearing about Fred's passing and expresses his gratitude for the murder. He appears genuinely moved by June's perseverance. June's isolation is a little lessened by his words. The mother hugs Nicole and expresses hope for a better future for June, who is still capable of love and longs to be whole. June can't sleep at the beginning of season 5 episode 2 of The Handmaid's Tale. She gets into her car, grabs her gun, and drives off, burying it in the backyard. In the meantime, Serena books a flight to return to Gilead in time for Fred's funeral. She is being briefed by Mark, who assures her that he will stay by her side throughout. "How similar to Fred were you?" She responds angrily. It's a good point, and ultimately Mark's words sound hollow. Nevertheless, there are more pressing issues at hand right now, and those arise from Fred Waterford's funeral. She is met at the runway by both Lawrence and Nick, with the former deciding to accompany her to the hotel. Serena, on the other hand, is more eager to see Fred's chosen church. It's not a particularly opulent affair, and it's obvious Gilead just wants to put this behind them and move on. Serena is not happy and demands a proper burial and funeral for her husband, Gilead's, and by extension Lawrence's. Intentions here are to get her out of Gilead as quickly as possible so she can live her new life. She has determined that someone assisted June in killing Fred, and she appears to be targeting Lawrence. But this isn't Lawrence's first time at it, and he knows the way of Gilead, so he brushes Serena aside, smugly pointing out at the wake that women aren't treated better than men in this society, so there's no chance she'd try to persuade the council to feel differently. Janine works alongside Aunt Lydia as she continues to train the newest group of handmaids. One of the girls, Esther, is to be prepared for the Putnam family by Janine, according to Lydia. She isn't exactly willing, but Janine insists that they must follow the rules if they want to survive. At some point, Serena requests a meeting with the Gilead men and decides they ought to showcase the location to the rest of the world. She believes that Fred's funeral ought to be televised internationally. Uncertainty surrounds whether this is merely a play to frighten June or if there is more going on. Strangely, Lawrence is totally in favor of it. Nick thinks it would contribute to Gilead appearing merciful as well, and that's exactly the public perception they need right now. I've mentioned Fred being a martyr before, and it appears that's exactly what his death will inspire. Thanks to Lawrence's influence, it's also enough to shift the balance of power away from Warren Putnam. To make this a big event, Serena decides to invite commanders from other towns. As for Nick, he meets Mark privately and offers him the chance to see his daughter and serve as an insider mole for the state. He's impressed with Nick's ability to stay hidden so far and is obviously excited about the chance to do so while reaping rewards. June hears about Serena's arrival in Gilead. She complains about Serena's ease in switching between the two states and eventually responds scathingly that Serena ought to be made a handmaid or nailed to a wall. June confides in Rita about her experiences while being overcome by rage. Rita responds by saying she doesn't want to discuss Serena and hesitantly admits that she too had difficulty in Gilead. Following her departure, Maura addresses a furious June. June tells Luke that Serena is aware that she murdered Fred that afternoon. She acknowledges sending Fred's amputated finger to her. He's in disbelief that June would endanger their family, and he's not doing anything to advance their cause and win Hannah's return. Since a while ago, June has struggled to think clearly because she is not only grieving but also angry to the point of being reckless. Nicole requires your presence. Luke implores June, come home, your family needs you here. Esther eventually makes the decision to end her life because she cannot continue living this way. Because they are alone in the room and Lydia appears to be in distress, Warren Putnam forces feeds her and appears to do more during an earlier unsettling encounter. Anyway, Esther confesses to Janine that she despises her and did this as a martyrdom act for June. While Luke and June watch a ballet, Serena starts her walk through Gilead's streets, which are lined on either side by people attending Fred Waterford's funeral. Fantastic editing switches between Gilead and Canada with faster cuts as the music builds in intensity. June and Luke share a kiss after it is over, but the joyous moment is abruptly ended when June sees that Fred's passing is breaking news and is being reported all over town. Every monitor has it, and to make matters worse, she has a 12-year-old give her a bouquet of flowers. When June and Luke realize who it is, they are utterly horrified. Hannah is here. We now understand the true motivation behind the worldwide broadcast of this elaborate funeral. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Serena made a shrewd move, underscoring the fact that she still has an advantage over June psychologically. Serena may have Hannah, while June may have killed Fred, showing off the two of them in front of everyone, while grinning sarcastically shows how intense their rivalry is. It has taken some time for this season to get going, but it finally seems like the rest of the tale will pick up speed and really intensify this rivalry. Now that June's rage has reached unfathomable heights, she is also just on the verge of beginning to cool off. The ending definitely gives away that next week's episode is going to be a real cracker, even though there are still some parts of this story that drag a little.